Alright, we're up at 147 BPM, and the first thing I noticed about the Richter tracks when I was studying these, especially the new ones, like you guys were asking for, is that the drums are really simple. It's literally just a kick, a hi-hat, like a main hi-hat, and then a closed hi-hat. Now, there is a bit of like science going on in there, and it's not necessarily simple in the sense that you just grab a kick and drop it in, but as far as what's actually going on once you do all that, it is very simple. And it's because if you listen to the synths, there's a lot going on, especially in the like mids and highs, you know, especially between these two, right? These create a lot of percussion that you're hearing. So then if you put that with those really simple drums, you know, like you could even almost think of this layer as part of that percussion, right? So to start off with, we got the kick. Now, like I said, this is not really a simple kick necessarily. So what we got going on here is I noticed that there's this very particular type of bass in the new Richter tracks. And I also know kind of how they do it, even though it could be done in a more complex way where you would go and you would essentially take your kick and then you would have the bass and kick separate, right? Whereas here, it's just one layer and we're kind of like gaming it to make it do a little bit of a different thing than the original sample does. You could also build this from scratch. However, just being realistic, I think that what a lot of people are doing is they're taking a lot of those old sample CDs that have these like hardstyle kicks on them, but obviously not like a, you know, modern hardstyle, like a very old school kind of hardstyle. And then you get something like that, which is just very like, it's got the bass and the kick together and they're great. However, the bass does have a little bit too much mid-range, because when you listen to the Richter tracks and like a lot of just this modern R label stuff, it's kind of like the kick is really loud and then the bass is really deep. And yeah, even though like you could hear that and you could go and make it from scratch, I literally think this is what those guys are doing. Is I think they're taking these old drums and then they're using filters on the bass to kind of like recreate that like low end while taking out the highs. So the way I'm doing this here is a very simple method where you basically take your kick, turn on a low pass filter, bring it down to about there, and then we're using the envelope on the filter. So what that does is every time the kick hits, now you have the filter all the way open at the start, right? Which obviously, like on a kick, you know, the start, it's actually very short, the part that you want to be the kick, right? It's literally like that. But then by the time that that's ending, the envelope goes down and then the filter sits. So you effectively make this really tight, punchy kick. And I swear, like if you look in these project files, this has to be what these guys are doing, because like a lot of those guys just have these old sounds on their hard drive and stuff. And it's honestly like, to me, it's a little bit more interesting artistically to actually go and kind of take them and repurpose them like this, rather than just go like, all right, bro, science time. We got to go and, you know, use Serum and perfectly recreate the old bass. Like, part of this is like they're bringing those old textures into new music, you know? It's not always using a sample because it's lazy. A lot of times, that's actually the better option for texture. Now, then we're just doing a little bit of a subcut. Honestly, I find the faster you go, the more like airy and high you want your sub to be. We also have this layer. So the way this layer is made is it's the exact same kick you just heard. If I turn off these effects, there you go. It's the same thing, right? The low pass filter, the envelope. Then we're actually cutting out a lot of low end, distorting just that low end or that high and mid that we're bringing through. And then just cutting again to make sure there's no more low end. Right, and you get this kick that just absolutely slams through the mix. And it's not really even necessary to do that layer. You could even turn it down a lot. It's really personal preference. I just noticed like in a lot of those Richter tracks, it really sounds like it's like that extra kick punch. So I wanted to show you guys how to do that. There's also this. So as you can hear, I do have a little bit of a rumble going on with the send. So we're just sending the kick into this. Nothing else is going in. And it's basically just a send with a bunch of reverb. which you can barely hear when I turn off the distortion, but then we're distorting it. Low pass, so you're just really getting the like industrial mids. High pass, and then this auto pan, which gives it the volume shaping to bounce off of the kick. So then same deal, we got our main hi-hat, which is a bit of layering. Right, we got the classic open hi-hat that you hear. There's a little bit of magic with this though, because you'll notice that I have this really subtle like sustain turn down on the amplitude envelope. But if I turn that back up, you notice how it loses a lot of punch when the sustain is all the way up? Because you're just getting this like wash of like tsh. But then if you just do a little tiny bit of that so that it gets shaped into like that, where there's just the sharp punch at the front, but still a bit of the body. Right? Like if you do too much, I mean, you just lose it. And the groove worked really well with a little bit of the body from that. So you want it to just be a little short spike at the front. Again, it's really subtle, and you won't really even necessarily notice that when I play it on its own if you don't have like an ear, but you would notice that in the whole mix. Even like somebody that has no idea about production, that's on a bunch of drugs on the dance floor, the track is still not going to hit as hard if you don't do this, right? I also pitch this one down, and then we layer it with this. So this is more like a live hi-hat, and you'll notice I also brought the start time forward on this so that they match, right? Very important if you're doing layering. So this just adds a bit more punch because that hi-hat was cool. But see how we just get a little bit more when you add this? And see, it bounces off of the kick a little better too. Cool. So then what I'm doing here is kind of playing with the stereo field, because obviously like when you layer things, maybe you don't know this, but if you do, you know that when you put two sounds together, especially when they're very similar in frequency, you can have phase issues, which I don't really hear here necessarily, but it also doesn't sound perfect. And plus I like this hi-hat, like the kick and the main hi-hat should be pretty mono, honestly. Like, you know, because punch happens in mono. Like, this is something I heard from Noisia years ago. It's like, they said, it's like, the more punchy you want a sound to be, the more just straight down the center it should be, right? Because that really is where all the punch is. So I just went ahead and turned this to mono. And then we add a little reverb. Like a little subtle amount. So there is like some kind of stereo, but it's a bit more in the highs. And then also this auto pan. So without it, right, it just keeps everything really tight and kind of under the kick. Right, so now we've got this little hi-hat. You know, just doing a little bit more of like a background hi-hat, but without taking up too much space. I've brought the start time forward on this, and you can also see that I'm making this a bit shorter, and I pitched it up a little bit. You know, just little things to kind of make the hi-hats kind of feel like they're all in one world. So then we move down to our first synth, which honestly is a bit of a percussion too. Right, so we got this here where it's just doing eighth notes, and these are like these kind of short notes, just on G sharp. I noticed this on that new EP and like the new album and stuff. There's a lot of these kinds of sounds. Now, there's a lot of ways to make sounds like this. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit of modular that you're actually hearing on the Rikhter tracks. At the same time, though, you don't need that, because you can basically make like this, what I've got here, which is like this pretty juicy wavetable sound. Just two wavetables that they're both from the formant section. Like, it's literally like vocal type of sounds, right? And then just kind of playing with the amp and the envelopes and the LFO. Like, you can see we have a short amplitude envelope. I've got this envelope here as well, envelope 2, which is on the filter cutoff. Right, so if I bring that down, you can hear it's like a pluck. And then these LFOs moving around the different wavetable positions too, which are random. They're random, and they're at different times. Right, so you can kind of like get a lot of movement out of that. So it's just this crazy moving sound. We have a vocoder. It's like an old dubstep trick. I honestly should say bro step, but it's like, you know, with the vocoder in Ableton, You can kind of juice your sound up a little bit, right? If you just play with this and kind of get the right settings. So I've got that. You can see I got the enhance mode on, and it's really just a little bit. Again, you don't really hear this that much until we get to the next step. Right, so we have this amp here, and that's distorting it and crunching it up a bit and just helping it to really kind of bring out the like juiciness in the sound. Then we got a bit of reverb. And this is doing a lot of things, right? Because you can see this also cuts out some low end, and it is on there quite heavily. So it's like, even though we don't have a high pass filter at the end of the chain, the sound already just has a lot of low end cut out of it. And then this auto pan for the side chaining. The other thing with this making it really stereo too is like, it kind of helps this stand apart from the other elements in the drums, because if you listen, those are all very much down the center, like I was saying. So then when we bring this in, all of a sudden there's something sitting in like both ears, and it's kind of like apart from the other stuff. Like if I get rid of the reverb, it's a lot easier for it to just blend in or kind of not have a good space in the mix. This really sits in a certain spot. But again, I couldn't necessarily say like that's what you should do every time. I'm more so showing you this is what worked in this situation, and this is the mindset behind it. It's not like this is what you should just be doing in every single time that you ever try to make a techno track. It's like, these are like different processes you can kind of take, right? So then after that, we got this little like crazy pluck stab thing. So it starts out like this with the MIDI, is doing a lot of what you're hearing. Right, so I made this pattern, kind of goes nicely with like the kick. And then obviously it's a bit loud without all the effects. So it's literally just a saw wave. That's all that's going on here. But there's a lot of attention to detail on the amp envelope. I think these kinds of sounds can be really deceptive because you hear it and you go, oh, it's just a saw wave. It's really short. Okay. But there's like, I noticed that like when I was trying to play with this, first I had it like this. And it has no like body. It's not that fat. And then I was like, okay, maybe if you do that. But ultimately what I found to get this kind of sound is you just want it to be really short, but then you're going to curve the decay up like that. So you see, you still have this sharp point. It's just like with the hi-hat. You have like this sharp point at the start of the sound. So you do have like a punchy sound, you know, but it still has a little bit of body, but it's not like, right? See, now that starts to sound too long. You still need to be able to hold out a note, and it just disappears. So again, like, it might seem like a really simple sound, but the amp envelope is really like, you gotta have careful attention to detail. Also, I went ahead and just made it monophonic too, so we wouldn't get any of the notes ringing into each other. Then we got the grain delay, which also has this LFO on it. So that's what's kind of taking us off into alien land, right? The key to this is you want a very fast time, right? Because like this needs to still be quite rhythmic, and you don't want it to just be like really off in space, but at the same time you do want it to be in space, right? So a fast time really helps with that. Not that much feedback. The cool thing here is the random pitch, the frequency, and the spray. These are kind of like, these two are kind of controlling how the granular stuff happens. So like if you turn these up, right, you get a very tight sound. If you turn them down, that sounds cool too, honestly, but it's like different sounds, right? So this worked really well right here. So we got that, and then yeah, the dry wet is the only thing being moved by this LFO. Again, it's another random LFO, really good for just creating weird movements throughout your tracks. And the cool thing with this is you could even make it smooth if you wanted. Although I kind of wanted this to be a bit choppier. That kind of like reverb where you hear like the punch of the sound, but it's still a bit like spacey too. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's just, you know, because you get this very short reverb. A little bit of overdrive, and this also helps filter it a little too and cut out some low end. And then auto pan sidechain. Then we have our arp. Now, the voices that are going on here, it might seem complicated. It's actually very basic. We're in G sharp minor. We're doing root, 5, 3, 6. That's it. And then up here is just another 3. Right, see, and the biggest thing here is more so how we use those voices. So, for example, down here, we're using the 5th, and then we resolve it up to the 6th, and that goes for the rest of the loop. So it's kind of like every time it comes back to this 5th here, it's like the 6th and 5th just resolve each other so well and do such good call and response, like if that's what you want to do. But yeah, just 4 voices from the scale. For the sound on this one, it's also like kind of a basic wavetable patch with a bit of attention to detail. So you can see I've just got these super detuned square waves. There's no unison, but they're detuned inside of here. Low pass filter on the MS2 setting with a little bit of drive. Yeah, so it's a bit just fatter. And then we got, an envelope on the low pass. Again, though, another one where the shape of the envelope is going to be where you're going to spend a lot of time. It's a simple sound that I could tell you in 2 seconds, like, all right, 2 square waves, detune, low pass, envelope, a little bit of drive on the low pass. But what I don't tell you in that simple explanation is also like, yeah, but you're probably going to need to spend like 30 minutes or 40 minutes just sitting here. Oh, it kind of works here. You know, it's like, it's more so that stuff that really takes the time. It's not, like, this is a simple recipe, but you need to really spend your time on how you bake it, right? And how you mix those ingredients up. Like, you can't just throw it all into a little baking bowl and then hope that it's just going to come together. You have to get, like, you have to really mix it up and get the right mix, right? We got a little bit of redux. Yeah, it does something really cool because you can hear it really takes this and makes it sound like an old sample or just something. It just has so much more texture. I really like the bits on the redux. Like that thing where it sounds like it's fighting to come through, and if I bring it down, it's so good for that. And then the rate too. And just how they interact. We got a little bit of echo. And this is nice too because it adds some stereo width. A lot of things are pretty mono here, like we were saying, but you know, with this and with the reverb on that other wavetable, it's like these little things are filling out the left and right ear. A little bit of reverb as well, speaking of that. Auto pan, side chain, and then a high pass. You can see this one's pretty cut because it does have a lot of like all that down there, right? So we just cut it up and got rid of that. Because you really still need room for those. The other thing with this too, with all those frequencies I just showed you that were in like the low mids, is that if you're going to have this kind of a kick bass where it does have like, it's not just sub. I mean, even though we cut some highs and mids, there's still quite a bit of low mid range going on, especially in those frequencies. Like, see? So just high pass it and just let that stuff come through and it'll be a lot smoother. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. You can get this template at the top of the description on my website. I recommend doing that. It'll help you make a lot of great hard techno tracks this year. Thanks for the support, everybody. Every little bit really helps. And I'll see you tomorrow with another video.